See what I've got here. IBM DOS 2.0 in almost pristine condition.
The only question is, will these still boot on my IBM 5150 after 39 years?
Retrocomputing is the use of older computer hardware and software in modern times. I'm the vintage collector and these are my stories. This is a German release copy of IBM DOS 2.0. I scored this box set on eBay for just under 30 euros, which was really a lucky punch. I've seen many vintage software packages which typically score at much higher prices, so I'm really happy about the price. Now one might expect that this package was heavily used, but that's really not the case. It has some minor wear, but I have seen definitely worse conditions than this one. It comes complete with the binder and the drawer, the extra quick reference guides and also two original 5 1/4 inch floppy disks. The labels on the floppies are washed out. They were probably originally red, but other than that the floppies look in perfect condition as well. And do you notice the speciality of these floppy disks? No? Then wait a bit for the big reveal. The front page of the user's guide refers to Microsoft Incorporated, whereas on the front cover of the binder it's being called Microsoft Corporation. Anyhow, this is signs of past times when there was close collaboration between both Big Blue and Microsoft. But for now, I'm really curious if these floppies will still work. When booting off the floppy drive, I'm getting greeted with this initial prompt. Well, obviously it's batch commands which are run here. So this is what the original setup program looked like back then. And obviously for better readability, the initial mode switch was run to flip to a 40 columns display. Now it calls me to create a copy of the boot floppy. Well, as I didn't come yet by fixing the second floppy drive on my 5150, the disk copy A to B won't succeed. So I'm aborting it by pressing Ctrl C. And wait, I'm hacking in the mode command to switch back to an 80 columns display. Now I'm copying it myself between drive A to drive A. One might not think too much about it, why DOS asks to make a copy of the floppy disk. Back then, before the dawn of built-in hard drives, floppies saw heavy use and wore down rather quickly. So it totally makes sense to make a copy of the disk. It's also inevitable, as these floppies have a very specific feature. Remember when I asked moments ago if you saw something special? Look again. Now? Right, there's no write protect notch here. In other words, these floppies feature a permanent, non-removable write protection. I've never seen this before, but knowing about the historical circumstances, this totally makes sense. I will quickly inspect autoexec.bat what's inside, so I can maybe carry out the required steps for the setup manually. Okay, so here we see it, besides many prompts that basically only disk copy and disk comp commands are run. And after some more prompts, basic is called to run kbdos, which obviously is for the keyboard setup. So let's do that quickly manually. Oh, that's not too many options for international keyboards as when compared to our present days. Only few options there are, and as I have a US keyboard, I'm gonna stick with option 1. And then I'm finally booting off my own copied floppy disk. Here we're getting to see the initial prompts for date and time, though it strikes me a bit to see a WT datetim command here. I've never heard about this one before. As you may be aware, Microsoft officially released the MS-DOS source code a few years ago, so I ran through the repository to see if I find something about this obscure command. Though, it's not there. So I must speculate that this was specifically created and included by IBM instead. And the same seems to be true for the autoexec.bat. It's not like I had never seen DOS 2.0 before, but at least never an original disk like this one, with the user experience IBM intended it to be back then. The autoexec.bat looks exactly like I guessed it from the previous screen output. Though I'm still confused about the wt datim command. Also, why did they use the rem command instead of the echo command to put text on screen? And why did they put a hard-coded string for the DOS version and the copyright designation in autoexec.bat? What is the ver command then outputting? Okay, just a version string and no copyright, but still, it feels a little bit odd, kinda like an unnecessary duplication of something that was more or less already there. And what about the date and time built-in commands? Why not use them as they run internally from command.com? They're blazingly fast. See the difference when I'm calling the wt datim command, which first has to load from the floppy disk. And then, it's not even localized. Now this is really oddball. Let's check it out on disk. And here it is. It's a com file, which basically seems to just duplicate what the built-in commands already do. Don't get me wrong, but it feels kinda strange, like as these batch files were put together by someone whom had no knowledge about DOS and just hacked something up. While DOS 1.0 originally was not much else than a CP/M clone, version 2 heavily evolved from there. One of the major additions was the inclusion of hierarchical directory support, though this made the old CP/M style prompt with just a drive designation obsolete. So now I'm going to first add the prompt command to the autoexec.bat and change it like so that I would always have the drive and the directory path shown on the prompt. And after the next reboot, I would get the intended prompt shown. Now, it is not widely known and the details have somewhat vanished into obscurity over time. VWestlife has made a video on his channel quite some time ago, digging into XEDOS and Microsoft's idea of establishing Unix as the high-end operating system and DOS or XEDOS as the low-end operating system, even introducing some compatibility options to have DOS behave more like a Unix-like system. If you would like to know more about this, then have a look at the video link. Now, while VWestlife specifically talks about MS-DOS, it's a known fact that IBM and Microsoft had an agreement for sharing the codebases and conducting joint development. As both MS-DOS and IBM DOS were largely identical to each other, I'm curious if the hidden commands of MS-DOS 2.0 also work in IBM DOS 2.0. There's actually two commands for config.sys, which are availdev and switchr. I'm just after a quick demo here, so I'll be just setting the switchr command to use a dash instead of the / character in config.sys. Again, if you want to see the full demo, then please watch VWestlife's video about the topic. Now, what should happen after the reboot is a change in behavior, and this should be seen immediately when the DOS prompt appears. You remember how I changed the prompt beforehand to include the drive and the path designation. See how the designation now has changed to A:/ instead of the DOS typical A:/. The switchr command changes the argument switch for DOS commands, which normally would be the /. I configured it to be a hyphen instead, and therefore the / now becomes available as a path separator. Though the / is not entirely gone, I can still use it as a path separator as well. And here is DOS again in its standard configuration with the switchr command removed from config.sys. You see how the /test designation is ignored again, as DOS treats it as an argument and not as a path designation.
And this concludes my brief look at this vintage IBM DOS 2.0 software package. I was really surprised seeing it still working after almost 40 years. Also, I learned something I was totally unaware of, namely that floppy disks sometimes were also distributed with a permanent and non-removable read-only lock. This dramatically increases the value of this package, as it's 100% for sure that nobody tampered around with the contents of these floppies. I hope you liked this video, and if you did, then please give me a thumbs up. As always, thanks for watching and see you next time. You're about to see some potential upcoming topics for future videos right now. Please let me know in the comments which topics you are particularly interested in. Of course, you can also drop me in some other topics you'd like me to chase down.